Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. This video is made for educational purposes only. This book is a collection of personal reflections and philosophical insights from one of history's greatest leaders, Marcus Aurelius. It offers wisdom on how to live a virtuous life, maintain inner peace, and deal with the challenges of the world around us. Through his words, we are reminded of the importance of self-discipline, compassion, and the pursuit of wisdom. Marcus Aurelius was born in 121 AD into a noble family that claimed to be descended from the ancient Roman king Numa. His father and grandfather were both important officials in Rome. When his parents died young, Marcus was taken in by his grandfather, who taught him to be gentle, meek, and avoid anger. The Emperor Hadrian noticed Marcus's good character and called him Verissimus, meaning more truthful than his name. Marcus was given a great education, trained in Stoic philosophy, and taught to live simply and avoid luxury. He was also trained in physical strength, even though he was weak, and showed great courage in facing wild animals. He avoided the violent games and riots of Rome's circus races, which were full of corruption. At the age of 14, Marcus was made a priest, and later he was adopted by Antoninus Pius, who became emperor. Marcus married Pius's daughter, Faustina, and they had a daughter. After Pius died, Marcus became emperor and ruled with his colleague Lucius Verus. Soon after, wars broke out on all sides. Verus was sent to fight in the east, but instead became drunk and lazy. Meanwhile, Marcus had to deal with a big rebellion on the northern frontier, where many tribes attacked Rome. There was also a terrible plague and famine in Rome, brought by the war. Marcus did everything he could to help the people, even selling imperial jewels to raise money. In 1609, Verus died, and Marcus continued the war. He faced another threat when Avidius Cassius, a general, rebelled in the east, thinking Marcus was dead. Marcus quickly returned to stop the rebellion, but Cassius was killed before he could act. Marcus then went to the east, where he received Cassius's head, but refused it. His wife, Faustina, died during this journey. Marcus celebrated a victory in Rome, then went back to fight more wars. His health was failing, and he died in 180 AD in Pannonia. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor who also loved philosophy. He wrote a book called Meditations to help himself think clearly and live well. He studied with a teacher named Crates, who was a cynic, and later he started his own school in Athens. His school became known as the Stoics, after the building where they met called the Stoa. The Stoics believed that the universe was run by a divine force and that people should live in harmony with nature. They divided knowledge into three parts: physics, which studied the world and its laws; logic, which helped people think clearly; and ethics, which taught how to live a good life. The Stoics believed that only virtue was truly good, and that things like health, wealth, and pleasure were neutral, neither good nor bad. They also believed that people should focus on what they can control, like their thoughts and actions, and not worry about things outside their power. Marcus used these ideas to guide his life as an emperor, even when he faced great challenges. He wrote his meditations as a private journal, not to teach others, but to help himself stay focused and calm. He compared his thoughts to those of Christians, who also valued self-control and living a good life. But Marcus's writing felt more personal and sincere, showing his inner struggles and his desire to live with honesty and kindness. His book is a deep reflection on how to live well, even in a world full of suffering and uncertainty. Marcus kept thinking about how he should act when others wronged him. He reminded himself that the person who hurts him needs kindness, not anger. He wanted to be gentle, even with those who made mistakes. He believed that the best way to deal with bad people was to stay good and not let their actions change him. He thought about how he had to forgive and move forward, not hold on to anger. He also talked about how he had to be ready to learn and improve. He remembered the people who had helped him grow, like his family and teachers. He thanked them in his mind, remembering what each had given him. He believed that everyone he met had something good to offer, and that showed how kind and honest he was inside. Marcus thought about the bigger picture of life and the world. He saw that everything changes, like a seed growing into a plant. He believed that death was just a natural part of life, and that the soul might return to the whole, like the universe. But he also felt uncertain about what came next. He wanted to live a calm, peaceful life, free from worry, and he tried to keep his mind focused on doing what was right. Even though he was a powerful emperor, he saw his role as a duty, not a privilege. He fought wars and made big decisions, but he did it with patience and care. He wanted to protect his people and keep the empire strong, even when it was hard. His life was full of challenges, but he stayed true to his values. Marcus keeps thinking about the people who helped shape him. He starts with his grandfather, Verus, who taught him to be gentle and not get angry. From his father, he learned to be modest and to live simply. His mother showed him how to be religious and kind. He also remembers the man who raised him, who taught him not to favor any side in the games or shows, and to be strong and not need many things. He thanks Diognetus for helping him stay away from fake magic and unnecessary things. Rusticus taught him to not chase fame and to write clearly and honestly. From Apollonius, Marcus learned to stay calm no matter what happens, even when he loses someone or is sick. He also learned how to accept kindness without becoming too dependent on others. He mentions Sextus, who showed him how to be patient and care for his family. From Alexander the grammarian, he learned to be fair and not criticize others too harshly. Fronto taught him about the dangers of power and how even noble people can be selfish. Alexander the Platonic showed him to be available to his friends and not make excuses. Catullus taught him to be loyal and to love his children. His brother Severus influenced him to care for his family and to seek justice. He learned from Severus about true leadership and how to value friendship. Claudius Maximus showed him how to be steady, fair, and kind, always doing what is right without being showy. Marcus reflects on how all these people helped him become the man he is. He thanks them for their lessons and how they shaped his life. He wants to live with honesty, kindness, and peace, always remembering the good in others and staying true to his values. Marcus thinks back on all the people who helped shape him. He thanks his grandfathers, parents, sister, and friends for their kindness and support. He remembers how he stayed calm and steady, even when he was sick or had headaches. He didn't let small things bother him, and he lived simply, not chasing fame or comfort. He treated others with fairness and didn't let his pride grow too big. He valued his family and tried to be a good leader. He also reflects on how he never took advantage of people, and he always tried to do the right thing, even when it was hard. He feels grateful for his wife, his children, and the people who taught him. He knows that without them, he wouldn't be the man he is today. He also thinks about how he avoided bad habits and stayed true to his values. He didn't let his body or his desires control him. He believed that everything happens for a reason and that even the gods have a plan. He reminds himself that he has the power to stay calm and act wisely, no matter what happens. He wants to live with honesty, peace, and kindness, always remembering the good in others. Marcus is thinking about how long he has put off doing what he should. He feels like he's been waiting for the right time, but now he realizes he doesn't have much time left. He knows he needs to live well, to stay calm, and to act wisely, no matter what happens. He wants to be true to himself and not let others control his happiness. He reminds himself that everything in life happens for a reason and that he has the power to choose how to respond. He talks about how people should act with honesty, fairness, and without pride. He says that if you don't take care of your own soul, you'll never be truly happy. He encourages himself to stop worrying about things that don't matter and to focus on what really matters, living a good, thoughtful life. Marcus also thinks about the nature of the world and his place in it. He believes that everything is connected and that he is part of something bigger. He reminds himself that death is just part of nature and that it's not something to fear. He says that if the gods exist, they care for the world, and if they don't, then life is still worth living because we have the power to do good. He reflects on how people who are unhappy are usually those who don't control their own thoughts and actions. He wants to stay focused on what he can control and not let external things distract him. He knows that life is short, so he must live with purpose and peace. Marcus reminds himself that life is short and his mind is not guaranteed to stay sharp. He knows that one day his ability to think clearly might fade, so he must act now. He talks about how even though things in nature may seem flawed or imperfect, they still have a kind of beauty because they happen naturally. He uses examples like bread that cracks, figs that shrivel, and ripe olives that start to rot. Each of these, though not perfect, has its own kind of beauty. He encourages himself to find joy in the natural world, even in things that might seem strange or unattractive to others. He also reflects on how great people in history, like Hippocrates, Alexander, and Socrates, were not immune to death. No matter how powerful or wise they all eventually passed away. This makes him realize that life is fleeting and that the gods, if they exist, are everywhere. If there are no gods, then life is still worth living because we have the power to do good. Marcus tells himself not to waste time thinking about others unless it relates to a common good. He wants to focus on what he can control and avoid distractions that lead to worry or bad thoughts. He wants to be a person of integrity, free from envy, suspicion, and bad feelings. He wants to live in harmony with himself and others, and to act with honesty and fairness. He reminds himself to do nothing against his will or without thinking. He wants to be a man of principle, not one who needs others' approval or help. He wants to be a Roman, a prince, and a man who lives with purpose and peace. Marcus keeps thinking about how he should always act with honesty and fairness, and not let his mind be troubled by things he can't control. He reminds himself that the only thing that truly matters is how he lives right now, moment by moment. He wants to stay calm and not let fear or worry take over. He also thinks about how life is short and that even the greatest people in history, like Hippocrates or Socrates, eventually died. He knows that death is part of life and that he should be ready for it, just as he is ready for any other action he does with dignity. He tells himself to focus on what he can control and to stop wasting time on things that don't matter. He wants to live with purpose, not for others' approval, but because it's the right thing to do. He also wants to live without fear or desire, because those things only bring trouble. He believes that if you stay true to yourself and act with integrity, you can live a peaceful and happy life, no matter what happens. He also talks about how the mind should be trained to see things clearly, without pretending or hiding. He wants to understand everything that happens in life, and to see it for what it really is. He believes that by looking at things honestly and clearly, he can live in harmony with the world and with himself. Marcus Aurelius is thinking about how his mind can stay calm no matter what happens. He says that if the mind is in its natural state, it can shift its focus to what it can control, even if things don't go as planned. He uses fire as a metaphor. Fire can change direction when blocked, but it still burns. He wants to live by clear rules, like an artist follows their craft. He reminds himself that he can always retreat into his own soul for peace, because his soul is where true calm lives. He says that if you look at the world as one big community, you can stop being angry at people. He also says that the body is temporary and even praise is fleeting. He wants to focus on what's truly important, living with virtue, kindness, and being a good citizen. He tells himself to be ready to change his mind if he's wrong, not for fame or praise, but for justice and the good of others. He believes that death is natural and that he should live well while he can. He says that if you focus on your own actions, not others, you can stay on a clear path. He ends by saying that if you live with reason, you'll be remembered as a good person, not just a name. Marcus is thinking about how praise and fame don't really mean much. He wonders if even after he's dead, people remember him. What does that matter to him? He says that being praised doesn't make a person better or worse. He talks about things like beauty and goodness, and how they don't need praise to be real. He says that what's truly good is things like justice, truth, kindness, and modesty. These things don't change because people praise or criticize them. He also thinks about death and the soul. He questions if souls live on after death and how the air and earth can hold them. He imagines souls moving into the air, then back into their original form, like how dead bodies turn into other things. He says that everything in the world has a purpose, and that we should focus on what's natural and right. Marcus reminds himself to stay focused on what's important, doing what's just, being kind, and living with reason. He says that if you live with reason, you'll be remembered not as a name, but as a good person. He also talks about how people often get caught up in unnecessary things, and how cutting back on actions and thoughts can bring peace. He wants to live simply, not worrying about what others think, and to accept whatever happens as part of life's natural flow. He uses examples from history, like the times of Vespasian and Trajan, to show that people always get distracted by the same things and eventually die. He wants to stay focused on what's truly important, living virtuously and being a good citizen.
Marcus keeps thinking about how everything in the world changes.
He says the universe loves change and nothing stays the same. He compares life to a river. Things come and go, and nothing is permanent. He reminds himself that even if his body is harmed, his soul should stay calm. He says that what happens to a good person is just as natural as what happens to a bad one, and that we shouldn't call it good or bad. He wants to live simply, not worried about what others think, and to accept whatever happens as part of life's natural flow. He looks at history and sees how people always get distracted by the same things and eventually die. He wants to focus on living virtuously and being a good citizen. He imagines the world as one living thing, with all things connected and working together. He remembers Heraclitus, who said the elements change into each other, and he wants to live as if he's part of this natural cycle. He thinks about death and how even great people, like kings and philosophers, are gone. He says life is short, and we should not be troubled by what happens. He wants to live in a way that brings peace, not worry, and to always be just, wise, and free. He decides to focus on what really matters, living according to nature and doing what is right. Marcus Aurelius starts by talking about how he feels lazy in the morning and doesn't want to get up. He asks himself if this is really what he was born for, to lie in bed and enjoy comfort. He reminds himself that he was meant to live an active, purposeful life. He compares himself to other creatures like ants and bees, which work hard to help their communities. He wonders why he isn't doing the same, doing what's natural for a human. He says that if he truly loved himself, he would do what his nature requires, even if it means working hard and giving up some pleasure. He talks about how easy it is to stop worrying and be calm. He says we should act according to nature and not let others' opinions stop us from doing what is right. He reminds himself that life is short and that he should focus on what truly matters, being just, wise, and free. He reflects on how people often take things for granted and don't realize how lucky they are. He says he should be content with little, avoid unnecessary things, and not be bothered by what others think. He wants to live simply, be kind, and not be distracted by unimportant things. He also talks about how people who do good things often expect something in return, but he wants to act without expecting anything. He believes that doing good is its own reward, like a vine that doesn't need to be praised after bearing fruit. He compares life to a natural order, where everything happens for a reason. He accepts that things happen as part of a bigger plan, and that he should be grateful for what he has. He says that if he is unhappy with something, he is actually harming the harmony of the world. He ends by saying he should keep trying to live according to reason, even if he makes mistakes. He should not give up, but instead return to his philosophy like a person seeking medicine, not for show, but because it's what he needs. Marcus keeps thinking about how people often chase things that don't really matter. He says that real goodness comes from being wise, fair, and free, not from wealth or fame. He wonders if people are so caught up in what they think is good, like money or pleasure, that they miss what's truly important. He asks if being kind, brave, and just isn't the real kind of goodness. He wants to live simply, without being distracted by things that don't matter. He also thinks about how everything in the world is changing, and how we can't control everything. He tells himself that he should accept what happens, because nothing truly harms him if it doesn't hurt the whole world. He reminds himself that he has control over his own thoughts and actions, and that's what really matters. Marcus keeps asking himself what he's doing with his mind right now. He wants to make sure he's using his rational part well, not letting it be controlled by bad thoughts. He says that if he can stay calm and focused, he can deal with anything life throws at him. He also thinks about how the soul is made of things that change, but the part that thinks and decides stays the same. He believes that by staying true to reason, he can live a good life, even if things go wrong. Marcus keeps thinking about how everything in life is always changing. He reminds himself that nothing stays the same for long. He looks at the past and the future and realizes how small his part in the whole is. He tells himself not to be proud or worried about things that don't matter. He says he's just a tiny part of the universe, and his time here is very short. He tells himself to stay calm and in control of his own mind. He doesn't want his thoughts to be controlled by pain or pleasure. He says if his mind stays focused, he can deal with anything. He believes that the soul is made of things that change, but the part that thinks and decides stays the same. He wants to live by reason, even if things go wrong. He talks about living with the gods, and how being kind and just is what really matters. He says if someone hurts him, he should let them go and not be angry. He believes that if people are treated with reason, they'll change. He also says that if people are mean or unkind, he should still be kind to them. He thinks about how life is short and how he should live with purpose. He reminds himself that he has already endured many things and done many good things. He says that if he keeps doing what's right, he's already living a good life. He wants to be remembered not for what he owns, but for how he lives. He ends by saying that if he keeps doing the right things, he'll be happy. He believes that true happiness comes from being kind, just, and living with reason. He tells himself to stay focused on what really matters. Marcus keeps thinking about how everything in the world is connected and how the universe works. He says the world is made of things that change, but there's a part of everything that stays the same, like the reason or mind that makes things happen. He reminds himself that nothing in life is permanent, and that even the things we love will one day be gone. He wants to stay calm and not let things like pain or praise control his thoughts. He talks about how people are often fooled by what looks important, like fancy clothes or big titles, but those things are just made of simple things like blood, hair, and dye. He says we should look past the outside and see what's really there. He also mentions how some people are always looking for praise or recognition, but that doesn't mean they're wise or good. Marcus wants to live by reason and kindness. He says if someone does something bad to him, he shouldn't be angry or hold a grudge. Instead, he should focus on doing what's right. He also says that if we keep doing good things, we're already living a good life. He believes that true happiness comes from being kind and staying true to ourselves. He reminds himself that even if he lives a short time, he can still do a lot of good. He wants to stay focused on what matters, like his own thoughts, his actions, and his relationship with the gods. He ends by saying that if he keeps doing what's right, he'll be at peace. Marcus is thinking about how people are often forced to do things they don't want to do, even if those things are supposed to help them. He wonders if it's fair to stop people from doing what they think is best for themselves. He says that when people do bad things, it's because they think those things are good for them. But he says we shouldn't be angry at them for that. Instead, we should try to show them the right way to live. He talks about death as the end of all the senses, feelings, and troubles. He wants to stay strong in his soul, even if his body gets tired. He reminds himself not to let the court or power change who he is. He wants to stay simple, kind, and true to himself. He believes that doing good and living right is the only real purpose of life. Marcus remembers Antoninus Pius, his teacher, and all the good qualities he had, like being fair, patient, and wise. He wants to be like him. He says if he stays focused on doing the right things, he'll be ready when his time comes. He also talks about how everything in life is connected, like parts of a whole. He says that even bad things are part of a bigger plan. He encourages himself to see the world as one big, connected thing and to live in harmony with it. He reminds himself that he's made of body and soul, and that only his soul matters. He says that if he lives according to reason, he'll be happy. He wants to act like a good person, even if it's hard. He ends by saying that everything in life is part of a bigger picture. He wants to live in a way that's right and true, and to accept whatever happens as part of the whole. Marcus is thinking about how everything that happens in life is part of a bigger plan. He says that even the bad things we go through are part of what makes the world work. He encourages himself to see life as one big, connected thing, and to live in harmony with it. He reminds himself that he is made of body and soul, and that only his soul matters. He says that if he lives according to reason, he'll be happy. He wants to act like a good person, even if it's hard. He also talks about how we should not be worried about things like wealth or health, because those are just part of life and not the real goal. He says that the only real goal is to live a good and right life. He thinks about all the great people who have lived before him, philosophers, leaders, and warriors, and how they are all gone now. He reminds himself that what matters is not their fame or success, but how they lived. He wants to live in a way that's right and true, and to accept whatever happens as part of the whole. He ends by saying that everything in life is part of a bigger picture. He wants to live in a way that's right and true, and to accept whatever happens as part of the whole. Marcus is thinking about how bad things in the world are not new, but just repeated again and again. He says that everything people do or suffer has already happened before, and it's all part of life's usual flow. He wants to remind himself that he doesn't need to be troubled by what happens, because he already knows it's part of the same pattern. He also talks about how his own thoughts and beliefs should be strong and clear, so they can help him live a happy and good life. He says that if he can keep his mind focused on what's right and true, he can stay calm and not let outside things bother him. Marcus reminds himself that the world is made of many parts working together, like a single body. He says that all people are connected and that he should see himself as part of this big whole. He wants to act with kindness and care for others, not just for their sake, but because it's the right thing to do. He also talks about how everything changes, and that change is natural. He says that even though people fear change, it's what makes life possible. He mentions great thinkers and leaders who are now gone, but he knows their lives were meaningful because they lived righteously. He ends by saying that he should accept whatever happens as part of the big picture of life, and that his duty is to live in harmony with it. He wants to stay focused on what's truly important and not let the noise of the world distract him. Marcus reminds himself that he should focus only on doing what is right and natural for a person. He says that if he keeps his mind clear and true, he can stay calm and not be disturbed by outside events. He also talks about how all people are part of the same whole, like pieces of a single body, and that he should act with kindness and care for others because it is the right thing to do. He explains that everything changes, and that change is natural and necessary for life. He mentions people who were great leaders and thinkers, but now they are gone, and he knows their lives were meaningful because they lived rightly. He wants to accept whatever happens as part of the bigger picture of life and live in harmony with it. Marcus says that when someone wrongs him, he should remember that the person is his relative, acting out of ignorance, and that both he and the person will soon be gone. He should also realize that the person hasn't harmed him and that his mind remains as it was. He encourages himself to be kind, even to those who wrong him, because they are mistaken. He also talks about how the universe constantly changes things, like a sculptor shaping wax into different forms. He says that dissolving or breaking apart is not so bad if it's not painful, and that the mind can stay calm even when the body suffers. He reminds himself that the mind is not made worse by pain or death, and that he should not let others' praise or criticism affect his inner peace. Finally, he encourages himself to live simply, to focus on what truly matters, and to love all people while obeying God. He believes that true happiness comes from living virtuously, not from avoiding death or seeking praise. Marcus keeps thinking about how everything in life is part of a bigger plan. He reminds himself that even when people wrong him, they're just acting out of ignorance, not malice. He says they're like family, and both he and they will soon be gone. He should forgive them and stay calm, because their actions don't really hurt him. His mind stays strong, and he doesn't let others' words or actions change that. He also talks about how the world is always changing, like a sculptor shaping wax. Things fall apart, but that's not so bad if it's not painful. The mind can stay peaceful even when the body suffers. He reminds himself that death and pain don't make the mind worse. He should not let praise or criticism affect his peace. Marcus encourages himself to live simply, focusing on what truly matters. He should love all people and obey God. He believes real happiness comes from living virtuously, not from avoiding death or seeking approval. He also thinks about how people react to suffering. He reminds himself that those who faced the same pain in the past didn't stay upset. They died, and now they're gone. He should not let pain or bad things make him lose his calm. He should use these experiences as lessons, not let them control him. He wants to stay focused on his own actions and inner peace. He should not worry about others' opinions or how they see him. His mind is the most important thing, and it should stay clear and strong. He should not let anything distract him from living righteously. He also talks about how some people think they're great, but they might not really be. He questions whether people like Socrates were truly virtuous, or if they just looked that way. He wants to focus on what's inside, not what others think. Marcus reminds himself that the universe has a purpose, and everything happens for a reason. He should trust that the world is guided by a higher plan. Even if things are hard, they're part of a natural order that's always working towards something good. He wants to live each day as if it were his last, staying calm, honest, and free from pretending. He should not be angry at others, especially when he knows he's not perfect himself. He should focus on doing good, not on getting recognition. He ends by saying that the universe had a plan long before it was created, and everything that happens now follows from that. He should trust that the world is guided by reason, and that he can find peace by living in harmony with it. Marcus reminds himself that no one, not even the greatest leaders like Alexander or Pompey, can compare to the wisdom of philosophers like Diogenes or Socrates. These thinkers truly understood the world and lived with clarity and purpose. Others, no matter how powerful, were caught in confusion and lived like slaves to their mistakes. Marcus knows that people like himself have already made many errors in their lives, and it's too late to regain the title of a true philosopher. He must stop caring about reputation or praise. What matters is living in line with his true nature, doing what is right, and staying focused on what is within his control. He tells himself to act as if each moment is the last, because life is short and everything ends. He should not be angry at others, even when they treat him unfairly. He must speak honestly and kindly, without pretending to be something he's not. Marcus also reflects on the natural order of the universe, how everything is part of a greater plan, and how all things come to an end. He should not fear change or loss because everything is temporary and part of the natural flow. He finishes by reminding himself that he is part of a larger whole and that the world is made of reason and purpose. He must trust in that and live with peace and clarity. He should not waste time on things that don't matter, like fame or wealth, and instead focus on doing what is right. His goal is to live in harmony with nature and the universe, and to find joy in that. Marcus reminds himself that no one is truly praised by everyone. Even if someone is admired by many, they are still just one person in a vast world. He thinks about how everything in the universe is connected and how all things come to an end. He reflects on how even the most respected people eventually die, and how their lives are just part of a bigger plan. He realizes that his own life is temporary and that he must focus on living according to reason and nature. He decides that the true joy in life is to act in a way that is right and kind. He must treat others with respect and avoid being attached to things like wealth or fame. He also thinks about how pain is not necessarily bad, because it's the mind that decides how to respond to it. If the mind stays calm, pain can be endured without suffering. Marcus encourages himself to live each day as if it might be the last. He wants to act with integrity and avoid unnecessary worry. He reminds himself that everything in life is part of a natural order, and that he should trust in that order. He also sees how people often get caught up in their own desires, but he chooses to focus on what truly matters. He looks at the lives of others, like the people in Augustus's court, and sees how they all eventually die. He realizes that no one is safe from death, and that life is fleeting. He decides to live with purpose, doing what is right and accepting what cannot be changed. Marcus is thinking about how he should act in the right way, even when things don't go as he wants. He wonders why he sometimes doesn't do what he knows is right, and he realizes it's because something else is stopping him. He tells himself not to be upset if he can't do what he wants, because it's not his fault. He believes that if he acts kindly and stays calm, even if he can't change everything, he can still live a good life. He talks about keeping his mind strong and not letting emotions control him. He reminds himself that his mind is powerful and can stay free from anger or worry. He wants to be like a clear spring of water, not letting bad things make it dirty. He thinks about how the world works and how everything is part of a bigger plan. He imagines the world as a clever designer that can turn old things into new ones, without needing anything outside itself. Marcus also wants to live with purpose, not being distracted by silly things. He believes that being kind and doing what is right is the most important thing. He wants to be calm and not let other people's actions bother him. He sees that people often get caught up in their own problems, but he chooses to focus on what really matters. He decides to keep his mind clear and ready to act wisely, no matter what happens. Marcus keeps thinking about how people act wrongly and why. He says that when someone does bad things, they're not just hurting others, they're also hurting themselves and going against the natural order of the world. He believes the universe is like a wise parent, making everything work together for the good. If people break this order, they're being unfaithful to the world and acting against truth. Marcus explains that lying, chasing pleasure, and fearing pain are all ways people go against nature. He says these actions are not just bad for others, but also make the person unhappy and disconnected from the world. He also talks about death. Marcus says death is just another part of life, like growing up or getting old. He encourages people to accept it calmly, not with fear or pride. He reminds himself that when he dies, his soul will be free from the body, just like a baby is in the womb before birth. He thinks about how people who live with others who believe differently are troubled, and he wishes he could leave this world peacefully, free from the noise and lies of others. Marcus is clear that living a good life means being kind, staying calm, and not letting bad things control his mind. He wants to act according to nature, not be distracted by silly things. He believes that if people live like this, they'll find peace and live well, even if they can't change everything. Marcus keeps thinking about how everything in life is always changing. He says even people like himself are constantly changing, like a baby growing into a child, then a youth, then an old man. Each stage is a kind of ending, but there's no reason to be sad about it. He reminds himself that he's seen this happen before in his own life, and there was never any real grief. He says we should accept change as natural, like the seasons shifting or the earth moving. He also talks about how people often get upset over things that don't really matter. He says if someone is angry or upset, it's not because of the thing itself, but because of how they think about it. He wants to stop being troubled by others' opinions or actions, because those are just part of the world's natural flow. He reminds himself that he can't control what others do, only how he reacts. Marcus encourages himself to focus on what's truly important, living with honesty, kindness, and a clear mind. He says if people live like this, they'll find peace, even if they can't change the world. He also believes that if the universe is wise, then everything that happens is for the best. Even if things seem bad, he says they're just part of a bigger natural order. He finishes by saying that if the gods are real, they care for everything, and if not, he should still act as if they do. He wants to live simply, without worry or desire, and be free from the noise of the world. Marcus is thinking about how people pray for things they want, like getting rid of someone or having a child. He says instead of praying for these things, we should pray to be patient and accept what happens. He reminds himself that he can't control everything, only how he reacts. He wants to stay calm and not let others' actions upset him. He talks about how when he was sick, he didn't focus on his illness. Instead, he thought about how to stay happy and peaceful. He didn't rely on doctors to fix everything, because he knew his sickness wasn't the worst thing. He stayed content with what he had. Marcus says if he ever gets sick or faces any big problem, he should still stay true to his beliefs. He should not let silly people or their opinions affect him. He wants to keep his mind clear and focused on what really matters. He also thinks about how people get angry when others act badly. He reminds himself that bad behavior is natural and will always exist. He should be kind and not let it upset him. He says each person has a virtue to deal with bad actions, like kindness for the unthankful. Marcus reflects on how he should not be surprised when people do wrong. If he's upset, he should look at himself. He might have expected bad things from someone or not been grateful for the good he's done. He says doing good is enough, and he doesn't need more rewards. Marcus wants his soul to become simple, open, and free from the body's limits. He imagines a time when he is fully content, not needing anything from the outside. He believes everything happens for his good, guided by the gods. He trusts that all things, even the future, will work out for his happiness and peace. He reminds himself that nature governs everything, and he must follow what is natural. He says if something happens, it's because it's meant to. He should accept it without complaint. He also thinks about how all things are part of the universe, and nothing is truly lost. Everything changes and returns to its original form. Marcus reflects on how everything in the world changes and decays. But this is part of nature's plan. He compares himself to a river, always flowing and changing. He says the body is made up of things that come and go, but the soul remains connected to the universe. He wants to live by certain values, being good, modest, and true. He wants to act with understanding and acceptance of what happens. He wants to be free from distractions and live a life of peace and clarity. He encourages himself to stay focused on these values, even when things get hard. He says if he loses his way, he should go to a quiet place and try again. He believes that living this way will bring him true happiness and peace. Marcus reminds himself that everyone has their own role in nature, like a fig tree or a bee doing what they're meant to do. He says humans should act according to their own nature, which is to live justly and wisely. He warns that if we don't stay focused on these truths, we'll lose them. He encourages thinking deeply about everything, connecting action with understanding, so we can act wisely and find true happiness. He compares soldiers who celebrate victories over enemies to a spider proud of catching a fly. But he says true pride comes from living according to reason, not from winning battles. He wants to see the world as constantly changing, everything turning into something else, like a river flowing. He wants to live simply, free from distractions, and be at peace. He urges himself to focus on doing what is right, not worrying about others' opinions. He says if we are given or taken away things, we should accept it with humility and love. He wants to live like someone who doesn't care about the world, like a person alone on a hill. He says it's better to die than to live in a way that others want. He reminds himself that everything in the world is temporary, even the greatest achievements. He says the world and nature love what happens, and he wants to share in that love. He knows his life will end, but he is ready for whatever comes next, whether it's continuing to live, retiring, or dying. He feels calm and ready, knowing he is doing what is right. Marcus Aurelius keeps thinking about how everything in life is part of a bigger plan. He reminds himself that even things like a baby being born or food being digested happen without us being in control. He says we should focus on the power behind these things, not just the things themselves. He wants to see the world as a process, always changing, like a river. He encourages himself to look at the past and the future, seeing how all people, like the rulers of old, live similar lives, only with different names. He wants to remember that everything in the world is temporary, like smoke or leaves on a tree. He says we should not be upset about losing things, because they are just part of life's flow. He also tells himself to be patient and not let worldly things distract him from living according to reason. He wants to be kind and sincere, and to act in a way that is true to his nature. He believes that if he lives virtuously, he can find peace, no matter what happens. He reminds himself that the mind is the only thing that can truly be free, and that everything else is just part of the world's natural order. He ends by saying that he is ready to leave the world, knowing that his friends and family will be okay without him. He wants to go with peace and without regret. Marcus reminds himself that a reasonable soul has special powers. It can know itself, control itself, and shape its own life. Unlike plants or animals, which give their fruits to others, a human soul gets what it needs from within. He says that even when life ends, the soul is free, not like a performer whose act is ruined if interrupted. A soul that can live fully, even in the last moment, is truly free. He wants to live so that he can say, "I have lived. I have everything I needed." He talks about how the soul can see the whole world and even understand the cycles of time. Everything that happens before or after is part of the same pattern. He believes that once you understand this, you can see that all people, past and future, live similar lives. So, he should not be upset about what happens to him because it's part of life's flow. He also wants to be kind and honest, not just for himself, but for others. He says that justice is the most important thing, and that it comes from living by reason. He reminds himself that he must stay true to his nature, even when others try to stop him. He must not be moved by fear or anger, and must remain calm and steady. He talks about how nature is perfect, and that all human actions should follow its example. He says that if we live by reason, we can find peace. He must not let anything distract him from this goal. He wants to act in a way that is true to himself and to others. He also says that if others hate or look down on him, he should not be angry. He should be kind, even to those who harm him. He wants to be like Phocion, who showed patience and kindness even when wronged. He believes that if he lives by reason, he will be free from anger and sadness. He is ready to face whatever comes, because he knows he is living according to the true nature of the universe. Marcus Aurelius is thinking about how people often look down on each other, but still want to be liked. He sees this as a sign of weakness. He reminds himself that people are always trying to outdo each other in wealth and power, but in doing so, they are hurting themselves and others. He says that pretending to be simple or kind is not real kindness. It's fake. He wants to be truly kind and honest, not just act like it. He talks about how happiness comes from being calm and not letting things that don't matter affect him. He says that the soul must stay steady, not be swayed by what people say or do. He reminds himself that he can choose how he reacts to things. If people are mean or wrong, he should not be angry. He should stay calm and focus on what's important, living according to nature and reason. He also thinks about how everything in life is temporary. He reminds himself that people's actions are driven by their beliefs, and that most of what they do is out of ignorance, not malice. He says that being angry or upset over others' mistakes is unnecessary because we don't know the full story. He encourages himself to stay patient and kind, even when others are not. He ends by saying that true strength is in being meek and gentle, not in being angry or proud. He wants to be a real man, not one who acts like he's perfect, but one who lives with honesty and care. He wants to be a leader, not just for others, but for himself, by staying true to his nature. Marcus keeps thinking about how to live a good life. He remembers a story about a country mouse and a city mouse. The city mouse lives a fancy life, but gets scared easily. The country mouse lives simply but is calm. Marcus uses this to remind himself that true peace comes from living simply and not being worried about things that don't matter. He also thinks about Socrates, who used to call people's silly ideas bugbears, like scary monsters that don't really exist. Marcus says that people are often scared of things that aren't real. He wants to stay calm and not let fear control him. He remembers how the Lacedaemonians, a group of people from ancient Greece, used to let strangers sit in the shade during public events. They were happy to be anywhere, even if it wasn't the best spot. Marcus uses this to remind himself to be kind and not worry about being treated unfairly. He also talks about how people often act out of ignorance, not because they're mean. He says we should be patient and not get angry over others' mistakes. He wants to be a real man, not someone who acts like he's perfect, but someone who lives honestly and with care. He ends by saying that the best way to live is to be simple, kind, and focused on doing what's right. He wants to be a leader, not just for others, but for himself, by staying true to who he is. Marcus is thinking about how to live a good life. He wants to be happy and not worry about things that don't matter. He says that if you don't envy yourself, you can enjoy what you have now. He tells himself to forget the past and focus on doing what is right. He wants to live simply, be kind, and do what is just. He says that if you don't let other people's opinions or bad things control you, you can be free. He wants to live in a way that matches nature and the world around him. He also talks about how God sees our minds clearly, without the distractions of our bodies or the world. He says that if you can let go of things like your body, clothes, and home, you can find peace. He reminds himself that only his mind is truly his own, and that he should protect it from fear and worry. He wants to live so that he is ready to let go of everything when the time comes, and only care about living according to nature. He wonders why people care so much about what others think of them instead of what they think of themselves. He says that if you could only speak what you truly believe, you would find it hard to live. He also questions why good people can't be brought back to life after they die. He says that if the gods were just and kind, they wouldn't have made it that way. He encourages himself to trust in the gods and live with peace. He reminds himself that he should use his mind to understand the world and live with clarity. He wants to see everything in terms of its true nature and to focus on what is important. He believes that there is something in himself that is divine and worth protecting. He wants to stop being controlled by fear and to live with purpose and truth. Marcus Aurelius is thinking about how life is just a short time in the big picture of everything. He imagines a calm bay, not a place where storms can happen. He says that if something stops, like an action or a life, it doesn't mean bad things are happening. Because once it's over, it's done. He believes that death isn't bad because it's part of nature's plan. If you live in line with nature, you're living well. He says that if you trust in the gods and follow their guidance, you're being led by them. He reminds himself to stay calm and not be worried about what others think. He wants to focus on what's truly important, like living justly and speaking truth. He wonders why people get so upset about things that don't really matter. He says that when you look at everything from a high place, everything seems small and temporary. He encourages himself to remember that all things are part of a bigger, natural order. He also talks about how people who once were very angry or proud are now gone, and their lives are just stories. He wants to live simply, not chasing things that don't bring real happiness. He believes that the gods are present in the world, and he feels their power in his own life. He says that true happiness comes from knowing what's right and living by it. He thinks about the world as one whole thing, with one soul and one purpose. He says that everything we see is part of a bigger, common nature. He wants to live in harmony with that. He questions why people fear death when it's just part of life. He compares it to a play that ends after 3 acts. He says that when life is over, it's not a loss but a return to the natural order. Marcus Aurelius was a Roman emperor and philosopher. He wrote a book called Meditations to help himself stay calm and think clearly. In this part, we learn about his friendship with a man named Fronto, who was a teacher and writer. Fronto was older than Marcus and helped raise him when he was a boy. They stayed close even as they grew up, and their letters show they cared deeply for each other. Fronto was a good teacher, but he was also a bit strict and sometimes made up stories to sound smart. Marcus didn't always like that, but he still respected Fronto. They had some disagreements, like when Fronto helped accuse a man named Herodes. Marcus wrote to Fronto to say he didn't like the way the case was being handled. He wanted a fair trial, not just a fight. Fronto agreed to listen and make sure the truth came out. Their letters also show how much they loved each other. Marcus wrote to Fronto about his family and his health, and he often asked Fronto to take care of him when he was sick. Fronto, in turn, wrote about his own worries and thanked Marcus for his support. They were like brothers, always looking out for each other. Marcus also talked about how important it was to be honest and kind. He wanted to live a simple life and do what was right, not just what was popular. He believed that everything in life was connected and that people should live in harmony with nature. Marcus kept writing letters to Fronto, even when he was busy with his duties as emperor. He spent his nights reading and studying, even though he should have been sleeping. He practiced writing poetry and speeches, and he loved making up long lines of verse, especially hexameters. He told Fronto he would have sent them right away if he had them, but his secretary, Anicetus, didn't pack them because he thought Marcus would make a mess of them. Marcus admitted he loved his poems and kept working on them even though he was tired and sleepy during the day. Fronto gave Marcus themes to write about, like a Roman tribune who throws someone into prison or a consul who kills a lion in front of the people. Marcus wrote about these cases, taking both sides. He also studied Greek, reading Homer, Plato, and Euripides, but Fronto had told him not to focus too much on that. Marcus wrote his meditations in Greek, and even after becoming emperor, he still asked for copies of Cicero's letters to improve his writing. Fronto helped Marcus with his speeches by giving him similes and advice. Marcus wrote letters full of praise for Fronto, calling him the best teacher and friend. He compared Fronto's speeches to the works of ancient masters like Cato and Demosthenes, saying they were the finest ever written. Marcus also shared details about his daily life, like going to the theater, court, or the countryside, but always returning to his books. He even wrote about his health and small moments, like sneezing or having a cold. In one letter, Marcus described a funny incident where he rode ahead of his father and heard a shepherd say some horsemen were robbers. He rushed to the scene, scared the sheep, and got chased by a shepherd's fork. Marcus didn't mind this little bit of mischief. It showed he wasn't just a serious emperor, but also a kind and thoughtful man. Marcus wrote a letter to his teacher, Fronto, about a trip to a small town. They traveled in a carriage, and it rained a bit. Along the way, they stopped in a place called Anagnia, which had old buildings, temples, and ancient books. Marcus was interested in these things and asked about some words he saw. Fronto explained them, and Marcus shared his own feelings, saying he missed Fronto a lot. He even joked about preferring letters from Fronto over wine, saying the letters made him feel better. Marcus and Fronto had a deep friendship, and their letters showed how much they cared for each other. After Marcus became emperor, they still wrote, though the letters became more formal. Fronto praised Marcus for his leadership, saying the army had been lazy and needed discipline. Marcus wrote about his family, especially his daughter Faustina, and how much he loved them. When Fronto got sick and lost his grandson, Marcus was very sad and wrote to comfort him. Fronto talked about his life, saying he had lived honestly and without wrongdoing. He also talked about his losses and how he felt about death. Marcus never forgot Fronto, even though he stopped mentioning him in his writings. He valued the real friendship they had over the lessons Fronto taught. Fronto's name reminded Marcus of the true kindness and love they shared. Marcus was thinking about the people who had been important to him over the years. He mentioned names like Hadrian, who was a Roman emperor before him, and Augustus, the first emperor. He also talked about philosophers like Chrysippus and Epictetus, who had helped shape Stoic ideas. Marcus was reminded of his friend Fronto, even though they hadn't spoken in a while. He thought about how Fronto had helped him with his writing, and how much they had cared for each other. Marcus realized that even though time had passed, the lessons and friendship they shared still mattered deeply to him. He also remembered other people who had been part of his life, like his daughter Faustina and his colleague Verus. He was grateful for the people who had supported him and helped him grow. Marcus kept thinking about how important it was to stay true to himself and to remember the good things in life. He wanted to live with honesty, kindness, and a calm mind, even when things got hard. So, what are the key lessons from this book? First, always act with honesty, fairness, and without pride. What truly matters is how you live right now, moment by moment. Don't let fear or worry control you. Stay calm and focus on what you can control. Another key lesson is to live simply and avoid chasing fame or comfort. Be grateful for the people in your life, your family, friends, and teachers. Treat others with kindness, even when they wrong you. Remember that everyone you meet has something to teach you. You should also accept that life is short and everything changes. Don't let small things bother you. Stay ready to learn and improve. Even when things don't go as planned, keep your mind clear and your soul calm. Finally, remember that your happiness doesn't depend on others' praise or your own wealth. What makes you truly good is being just, kind, and wise. Live with purpose and always be true to yourself.